everyone. Welcome to the Beacon simulation. I'm Professor Phil Young, and I'm happy that your professor has provided you with this exciting and useful way to reinforce your learning of key financial terms and concepts. I originally developed this simulation for corporate seminars and workshops around the world. In fact, the 4 products in the simulation, Alpha, Beta, Chi, and Sigma, were inspired by some of the products and services of these corporate clients. I'm now focusing on providing the Beacon simulation to professors and their students in colleges and universities. What's the difference? Well, as students, I think you'll probably be graded on your participation. But let's not worry about grades for now. Let's just concentrate on learning and applying your learning. So, on with the presentation.
The topics that we'll cover are, first we'll look at the decision-making process, the characteristics of the 4 products, Alpha, Beta, Chi, and Sigma, and then we'll examine the decision variables and take a special look at the impact of 2 decision variables, marketing and development. There's a special feature of this simulation called lost and bonus orders, and we'll cover that too. Capital spending and loans, of course, are typical in any business decision, so we'll include that. And then we'll give you tips on managing the 4 products. There are no right answers in this simulation. It's totally interactive, and the impact of your decisions will of course depend on your competitors as well. And then finally we'll give you a summary chart of the 4 products and some ways to keep score. Everyone begins the simulation in the same position, and it's the year 6. Typically there are 4 teams, so that's what we're going to use in this explanation. Sometimes there are 3 teams and sometimes there are 5, depending on the size of your class. Here's a sample of part of the welcome package that you will be receiving when you start the game. This is for the year 5. The year 5 has just ended, and you and your team are to take the information from this and make a decision for the first year, year 6. This is how the simulation is processed. You'll receive your welcome package with the results from year 5. You and your team will take these results and use it as a basis for your decision for year 6. You will then email your decision to us, and we'll email the results back to you for the next year. This process repeats itself for each year. Typically, we have 5 decision years. I'm now going to provide you an overview of your 4 products in your product portfolio. And anytime you want to look at any of the details more closely, then simply right-click and hit pause. Starting first with Alpha, it's a commodity-like product, very difficult to manage because it has very low profit margins. It's quite price sensitive to changes in price in the market. And as you can see, the impact on development is that it helps you to reduce your unit variable cost, helps you to become more efficient in your production. The customers are repeat customers, many of them. Unfortunately, there is 0 intrinsic growth, and so it's a very tough product to manage. Beta is a product that everyone in the company is hoping will help to generate its future growth. In fact, there are some people who believe so strongly in it that they've called it the beacon of light that will guide the company to its future growth. That's how we got the name of the simulation, Beacon. A lot of money has been spent in the development of Beta. A lot of money has been spent in building production capacity. Early market research shows that there are a lot of people eagerly awaiting the product. So all you have to do now is price it, put in the marketing, and sell it, and keep building the right amount of capacity to match its future growth. Chi seems to have the characteristics of the Boston Consulting Group cash cow. It has a high margin, it's making a lot of money for the company, and because of the low growth projection, it really doesn't require that much of an increase in capital expenditure. So we're expecting Kai to make a lot of money for your company. But the challenge is that because its margin, particularly its gross profit margin, is so high, there's a lot of money that you can spend in marketing and development, but at the same time, you have to spend a lot of money on marketing development to give the customers what they want. If you give them the product with the latest features and functions and all the bells and whistles, they'll be loyal to you and they'll pay a premium. The price sensitivity is relatively low. Sigma is a service business. Unlike the other three products, you're not producing a product, so you don't have inventory, but your main job is to balance the people, the headcount, with the amount of work that you hope that they can do. So you hire contractors to fulfill contracts. What you can do is to train them by spending money on development. As you train them, you will need less contractors to do a contract. The key for you is to balance the headcount with the amount of work, namely the contracts, that you can sell. There are decision variables having to do with the operations of the business, the capital expansion of the business, and the financing of the business. As you can see here, most of the decisions have to do with the running of the business. These operational decisions are price, production, marketing, and development. As far as capital expenditure, you can increase the production capacity of alpha, beta, or chi. And then finally, the financing decision is relatively simple. You can either take out loans or pay them back. This slide is just to remind you that all teams start off at the same levels. Production capacity of alpha, beta, and chi, you can see there. And in the case of Sigma, everybody starts off with 244 contractors. And you can observe the starting prices. The one thing we should point out is that beta is going to be launched for the first time. So there's no base price or reference. We suggest a starting price of $10,000, but it's all up to you, particularly because you know that in the first round, the demand exceeds the supply. Pricing guidelines. You can increase or decrease the prices by as much as you want, but you have to do so in increments that you see here on this chart. So alpha can be raised or lowered in increments of $1, beta $500, chi $1,000, and sigma $10,000. So if you raise the price of alpha from the original $100, you can't say $101.95, okay? You'll probably go to $102 if that were the case. Production versus capacity. Capacity is the total amount of units that you're able to produce. Production is the total amount of units that you decide to produce. So for example, in year 5, the capacity of chi was 306, but the people before you decided to produce 300 units. In order to provide you with a guide as to how much to spend on marketing, we suggest, in fact, we recommend highly that you spend a minimum amount of marketing based on your projected revenue. I'll explain projected revenue in just a moment, but as you can see here, there are certain percentages of your projected revenue that you must spend on marketing, and if you don't, you'll lose orders. If you spend more than the recommended percentage, then you will receive bonus orders. How do you calculate projected revenue? Very simple. You take the amount of the units of production plus the inventory, if any, all multiplied by the price. For example, in the case of alpha, in the first year, you have a capacity of 333,333. Let's say you decide to produce 300,000. You have an inventory of 25,000, and you decide to sell the product at $99 a piece. Your projected revenue then is 300,000, that's your production, plus the $25,000 inventory times $99. So your projected revenue is $32,175,000. Take 14% of that, and your minimum market spend is $4,504,500. So let's use this chart as a way of reviewing the key terms, because sometimes at the beginning there's a source of confusion. So capacity is the amount that you're able to produce. Production is the amount you decide to produce. And supply is the actual amount of product that you can offer on the market, which means your production plus your inventory. So now remember, there are 4 operational variables in the Beacon simulation. We talked about pricing and the increments in pricing. Production is the amount that you decide to produce based on your capacity. Marketing, we talked about marketing, it's important. And now let's turn to development. Development is a bit tricky because when you spend money on development, it could mean different things depending on the product. In the case of alpha, when you spend money on development, it helps the production to be more efficient, and you can see that by the reduction in your variable cost per unit. When you spend money on beta and chi, it increases the quality of the product, and the way in which you'll know that this is happening is because you'll see an increase in the star rating. There are 5 levels of star, 1 through 5, and the more you spend money on development, the higher the star rating. Everyone starts off with 3 stars for both beta and chi. And finally, with sigma, when you spend money on development, you make your contractors more efficient. You're training them, and therefore you'll need less contractors per contract. Lost and bonus orders. There are 3 ways that you can lose orders in this simulation. Number 1, your price is too high. Number 2, you don't have enough capacity. Or number 3, you didn't spend enough on marketing. In fact, any one of those 3 or all of those 3 could have an impact on you. And you will be receiving, along with the results of your decisions, a lost order and bonus order report in which you can see exactly why you lost the orders. Now, you can also have bonus orders. If you spend more than the minimum amount on marketing, you'll have some bonus orders. And if you spend more than a certain amount, and we're not saying what that certain amount is, however, for development, then you would have bonus orders for beta or chi. Here's an example of a lost order report that you'll receive every year. Let's look at, for example, the North team and the beta product. As you can see here, the North team price was too high, and so they lost 73 orders, and they lost 390 orders under supply because they simply didn't have the capacity. Now, going down to the East team, we see that the East team, as far as their Sigma product is concerned, lost 14 contracts because they didn't have enough contractors. Now, the concept of lost orders in the simulation simply means that customers that you could have sold to just stayed at home. In other words, you're not losing the orders to other teams in this simulation. Here's the bonus order report. It shows you that you might get bonus orders if you put above the minimum amount of marketing and above a certain amount in development for the chi and the beta products. Capital expenditure is a decision variable that's important if you want to grow the production capacity of your product. It's important to know that whatever you invest in production capacity or capital expenditure will only be available the following year. So for example, if you invest $1 million in year 6 for beta, then your production capacity will increase by 46 units in year 7, the following year. You can invest as much or as little as you want in any dollar increment. But here are the guidelines for the impact. So for every $1 million spent, you'll get an extra 5,555 units for alpha, 46 units for beta, and 6 units for chi. The financing of a business is kept relatively simple. The maximum amount of money that you can borrow in the first year, and that's really a critical year, the first year, is $3 million, and we strongly urge you to borrow the $3 million just for the first year. As you go along, you'll probably find you won't need to borrow as much. In fact, you'll probably find you have surplus cash and you'll want to pay back your loans, but at least for the first year, borrow $3 million, just to provide yourself with a cushion. The interest rate is 6%, and interest is paid automatically in the simulation for you. If you borrow money, the loan, if you borrow money, the cash is available the following year. If you pay it back, however, you're paying it back for that decision year. The management of alpha, beta, and chi are fairly straightforward. You produce, you price, you spend money on marketing and development, and you hope you'll sell a lot. Sigma is a little bit more challenging in this simulation because it's a service product and you're not producing and selling. Instead, you're hiring contractors to fulfill a contract. So let me elaborate a little bit more on how to get started with Sigma. In year 6, you start out with 244 contractors. Every year, you have to decide how many contractors you want to hire. To determine the number of contractors that you need per contract, you need to divide the experience index, which is shown to you in your output, into the number 9. For example, in year 5, the experience index was 1.125. Therefore, it takes 8 contractors to fulfill a contract. The starting experience level of each contractor in year 6 is 1.16. Why did that happen? Because the contractors who are on your payroll are more experienced and you've spent some money training them. Therefore, it will take 7.75 contractors to do the work. As you can see here, what happens is as your experience level goes up, you will need less contractors to do the job. But be careful. When you hire new contractors, for example, suppose with the 244 existing contractors, you hire 10 more contractors because you think you can sell more contracts. These new contractors come in at the original experience level of 1.0. So when you do the calculations, you'll have to take some sort of weighted average of the total amount of contractors that you will need to do the job. The cost per contractor, whether old or new, is $100,000, and if for any reason you decide to lay off a contractor, you will incur a one-time cost of $30,000. These next 2 charts, I hope, will be a useful way to summarize everything that I've said so far. You can see the 4 products in terms of their product characteristics, price sensitivity, minimum marketing, and on the next slide, we have development, customers, intrinsic market growth, and capital. And I think it would be worth pausing on these slides as a good reminder of the key characteristics of these products. The main objective of the Beacon simulation is to help you to reinforce your understanding of key financial concepts. But of course, we know that you're all very competitive and you'd like to know who's the best team. Well, just like in the real world, there are many ways to judge the financial performance of a team and who's best. We're going to leave it to your professors to guide you as to how to determine who is the best team. You have lots of information each year on the company's performance and also the performance by product to compute all kinds of financial ratios to indicate how well you're doing. But one of the ways in which you can measure how well you're doing is by using an indicator that we provide to you, namely the stock price. The stock price is determined by a weighted average of each team's net profit and revenue growth, 75% for the net profit and 25% for the year-over-year revenue growth. So there you have it. We hope that this presentation has given you enough information to get started on the simulation. It's a very engaging and exciting experience. I can assure you, the most important thing is to learn a lot, but in the spirit of the competition, good luck to all of you, make a lot of money, and may the best team win.